I want to set the tone here to say that what you learned today will be translated into your experience through conversations. And we'll tell you more about that later. What we are trying to do here is to help students to see how the pieces of life, you're teaching pieces of life in your class, pieces of mathematics, pieces of this and that, how those pieces fit into the bigger picture or the context of, quote, the whole. And I'll explain what I mean by all this later. By the time you're through, you will be able to, number one, you're going to design a free-flowing, that means it's not controlled by you. And the students may take it directions that you'll be surprised that it will go, and that's normal. Free-flowing classroom conversations that will enable your students to draw their own conclusions. That's important. To draw their own conclusions as to how whatever you're teaching fits into the bigger picture of reality. So there's a tool that you're going to learn how to use called the Conversation Starter. I'll show you that in just a minute. Secondly, you're going to be able to design, there's that word again, design ways for your students to bring meaning and purpose to any activity, from playing soccer to solving math problems. And how are they going to find meaning in that? By seeing it in the context of the whole. And for that, we're going to get into the awesome activator tool. Then thirdly, you're going to be able to design questions that will enable your students to tell the difference between truth and baloney and whatever they might be viewing or reading or hearing someone else say. And that tool is called the Truth and Baloney Detector. And finally, you're going to be able to design questions for yourself. This tool is mainly for you to keep on target with respect to your own purpose and calling as a teacher or an administrator. And that tool is called the Daddy Plan tool. So that's the agenda for today. Now, I also want to add this, that these tools are not just for formal use in schools. You could very well cross out creating classroom conversations and put in creating household conversations. I don't know how many of you are married or have children, whatever, but these tools can be used just as well in a home context as in a school context. Therefore, if anyone here or watching this would like to use this as parent training, I highly recommend it as parent training as well. So, number one, here's the Conversation Starter tool. It looks like this. Now, in your packet, you should have hard copies of all of the handouts. Let's take a look at your hard copies. Can you find the Conversation Starter? You're going to go through a lot of these, okay? Then also take out this one, the 101 Biblical Worldview Truths document. Now don't get it confused. There's one that says 99 truths about work, economics, and human flourishing. We don't want that yet. We want the 101. And by the way, some of you, when you look at these premises, you might think to yourself, well, where's the scriptural support for that premise? Okay. The scriptural support is in another document, which we will make available to you. But that document is 15 pages long. So we said, oh, let's not copy that off from you folks. Okay, you can look at that later. And then the third one to take out for now is called Questions for Contextualizing Subject Matter. So you all have the documents? Are you ready to go? Now, notice that we use the word contextualizing on this document. Questions for contextualizing subject. What do we mean by contextualizing? So I'm going to show you a short 5-minute video clip that will expand that word contextualize. It's a word that we'll use throughout the workshop, but I want you to understand what it means. So Karen, if you get the lights. Without knowledge, understanding is impossible. Yet, it's possible to have knowledge and yet be devoid of understanding. Christian education is education that goes beyond knowledge to profound understanding. Let me explain. When it comes to understanding anything rightly, context is key. And it's the unique context of a biblical worldview that opens human understanding in ways that are otherwise not possible. How is context related to understanding? Well, take the word train, for example. As a word, you can learn to read it and spell it in the first grade. But no matter how old you are, to properly understand the meaning of the word train, you have to see it or hear it in the context of other words, a sentence. The word train can mean to teach through guided practice, or it can mean a big engine that has wheels and pulls boxcars down railroad tracks, or it can mean a long extension of a dress. The context in which the word appears allows us to attach accurate meaning to the word. Here's another illustration of how context relates to understanding. If I show you this small piece of a larger photo, it's nearly impossible to understand what you're really looking at. But if I show you the piece in context, it makes sense. Now, is there a larger context beyond bananas? The answer is absolutely. If we view a banana in the context of a grocery store, we can easily see an economic aspect to bananas. There's also a biological context to bananas, which we can see when we study banana plants and we look into what it takes to grow bananas well and how the fruit benefits our bodies. But is there an even larger context for bananas than economics and biology? Oh yes, there is. The largest context is larger than the universe. Let's call it a uniview. When we make connections between the banana and the biblical uniview, we can begin to understand bananas as we really ought to understand them. A biblical uniview is what we're touching on when we ask questions like these. Is there a creator, designer behind bananas? If so, what does the banana specifically tell us about the creator, designer? How do bananas fit into God's reason for creating human beings? Is there a divine moral order for harvesting bananas and bringing them to market? And if so, what do we need to know about the do's and don'ts of banana harvesting and marketing? Does God have a yet-to-be-discovered purpose for bananas? How does God see them and why? The largest context we can think of, the context of a biblical uniview, goes far beyond the breakfast table, the grocery store, and the banana patch all put together. We'll talk more about biblical worldview, or uniview, if you will, in another segment. But for now, just grab hold of this nugget that seeing things, whether it's words or biology, mathematics, history, music, or sports, seeing all things in the largest context possible, the biblical uniview, is what authentic Christian education does. This can happen in homes, schools, and churches. Wherever a biblical context is clearly understood and applied to all subjects. And with a bit of training, and I'm not talking about choo-choos here, anyone can learn to do this effectively. In the free course, Eliminating the Sacred-Secular Divide, there are 6 tools that parents, teachers, and church workers can use to help children and students of all ages to contextualize any subject at any grade level. We'll look at each of these tools separately. What I'm sharing with you in this segment is from chapter 13 of the text, and if you want to know more about contextualization, check it out. I invite you, not now, but later on, to take a look at this channel. I just created it last June, so it's only been up a year. Almost all of the videos that I'll be showing you are from this. And there's a lot more videos. There's over 50 of them here. They're all free. Just know that they're there, okay? So, what you want to do here is to identify a subject or a theme. Now, I'd like you to identify a subject or a theme that you're going to be teaching, or if you have kids, if you want to talk about it around the dining room table, to put that subject matter or theme in the center box. This is a cognitive focus. It's not an activity or a job. There's another tool for that. But I want you right now to think about something that you're going to be either teaching to your kids, or you want to teach to your school kids or your own kids. And I want you to write that in the box right now. Take your time. Don't rush here, because you're going to be building your lesson around that subject matter. Lydia?
Coming to America.
Coming to America. Immigrating?
Yeah.
Okay,
Like the
good.
history of immigration in America.
Okay. Brianna?
Human body systems.
Human body systems. That'll be interesting. Karen?
Well, as a principal, I will be teaching about the importance of kindness.
Kindness. Good. Great. Love it. Kevin?
I put organization, but I guess that would be like, as a biology teacher, the organization of life and how everything works together, the organization of the body,
Gotcha.
all that.
Okay. And Rachel?
Global trade.
Global trade. Love it. Now, you can put any cognitive subject matter you want to, and that's appropriate for any grade level. We have adult topics here for these principles that we're going to be talking about. We have first grade topics. It doesn't matter. Preschool, colors, anything works. The context that you're going to be putting this into has 5 components, and they are as follows. The God component, the creation component, the humanity component, moral order component, and purpose component. I'm going to peel the onion a little bit on each one of those. There are a lot of different definitions of worldview, biblical worldview, good definitions out there. This is what I call a working definition of worldview. And so that's what we're going to use for this workshop. A worldview is a big picture of reality shaped by beliefs or assumptions about 5 things. Number 1 is God. Now, all worldviews have beliefs or assumptions about God. All of them. Even worldviews that say there is no God. Because that is a presupposition. There is no God. That's a premise. There is no worldview on the planet that doesn't have a commitment to an idea regarding God, even if the idea is he's a fairy tale, okay? So that word God, in our context as Christians, Bible-believing Christians, has a particular definition and a particular meat on the bone. But all worldviews have a view of the ultimate authority, even if it's yourself, like if you're a secular humanist, that you're the ultimate authority, or the highest power, some people use that, and what is the nature and role and of that force or entity, all worldviews. Next, a worldview is a big picture of reality shaped by our assumptions or presuppositions or beliefs about creation. Now, when I say the word creation, it doesn't just mean the original creation event in Genesis, although that's part of it for Christians. That isn't part of it if you're a humanist or have a different worldview. But all worldviews have presuppositions about where the stuff came from. And also, what is the nature of the stuff? I mean, is it just material? Or is there another dimension to it? And so we would say, yes, there is another dimension to God's creation. It has to do with an unseen world, which is just as real as the seen world. And in that unseen world, we have unseen beings, like angels. Okay, now sometimes we do see angels, but a lot of times we don't. Okay, but that's all part of creation from a Christian perspective. That perspective is a Christian perspective. Obviously, if you're a naturalist, then that's a fairy tale to you. Okay, but we all have this view of what makes up the stuff of the universe, and how did it get here? Okay, and is there more to it than meets the eye? Thirdly, all worldviews have a view of humanity. Who are human beings? What gives us value? What gives us worth? What happens when we die? And how do we know what's true? Those are all questions related to humanity. Okay, and then moral order. How do people determine what's right and wrong? And finally, purpose. Is there a reason and a purpose for reality? Those are your 5 worldview components. Okay. Now, you might say, well, are there more than 5? Well, maybe. We're just going to stick with 5. And because we have 5 fingers on the hand, and it's easy to remember 5. Okay. In fact, let's not look at the screen and tell me, what are the 5 primary worldview components that we are going to deal with here today? God. Anybody? Now let's hear a second one from somebody. Kevin, I'm going to put you on the spot. What's another one?
Creation.
Creation. I don't want to embarrass it. Yes. Humanity. Over here. What's the one?
Moral order.
Moral order and
Purpose.
Purpose. Wow, you guys are smart. So that is the context. Now, let me give you an example here. Somebody thought, okay, I'm teaching 4th grade. I'm gonna have a 3-week unit here on plants. Okay, so I'm going to put that in the center. By the way, I think this tool works particularly well when you're introducing a new unit, a unit of study, like you're going to introduce a unit on colors. Now, I noticed when you put that cognitive idea in the center, you didn't put red, you didn't put pink, you didn't put yellow, black, anything. You put the broader subject, which is colors, which includes those. I like that because you don't want to get too myopic with this tool. Okay. This person put in plants, all kinds of plants. It's a unit of study. What this tool does, I think it works really well in introducing students to a new general subject. Okay? So, I want you to go through your 101 biblical worldview truths and put a little tiny mark next to each truth that, get this, directly relates to your subject matter. Not indirectly. All of them relate indirectly to every subject matter, but I mean directly. Now, what I'd like you to do is to pair up with the person next to you, 2 by 2, and share with them why you selected what you selected. I hate to cut you off, but we need to keep moving here. Now, take out this tool, or this part of your tool. It's called Questions for Contextualizing Your Subject. Now, what I want you to do here is to pick which questions relate directly, not indirectly, to your topic. And mark every one of them that kind of jumps out at you. Say, oh yeah, that one really relates to organization or colors or whatever. So go ahead and everybody do that privately. Share with your neighbor why you picked that one. Justify it. Okay, sorry to interrupt you, but we need to move on. I'd like to hear just a couple examples. Let's start with the elementary lower grades over here in that far table, Mr. Cameraman. Who would like to share what was a significant question for your subject matter? Anybody? Lydia?
I'm doing Coming to America, so immigration in America, and I found a lot under the God questions that I think would be great discussion, like how does God feel about immigration? Why do you think immigration is important to God? If you were God, what would you do about immigration? What has God said in His Word that relates directly or indirectly to immigration? What assumptions about God lie behind immigration?
You picked them all. I mean, did you leave any out?
Yeah.
Okay, a lot of questions there. Yeah, I think you'll find this true for your subject matter. There are certain of the 5 components that will just spark all kinds of discussion, and some not so much. You may actually find there's sometimes a component that is not really relevant to your subject matter. That does happen occasionally. Let's do one more from the high school or middle school. Yes.
My topic was Corrie ten Boom and the Holocaust, and so I thought it'd be cool to ask, how do you think God feels about it, and then dive into, if you were God, what would you do about the Holocaust? Because that kind of shows and reflects their opinions about God. Why would a loving God do that? We always talk about that, or allow this to happen. So I think that would include a lot of good discussion as to letting me know where they understand God, or who they understand God to be.
Right. Yeah, a subject like the Holocaust would just be great for contextualizing from a Christian perspective. You know, how do you look at this catastrophe here? Wow. I'm going to show you the example of plants. This is the way one person did it. Now, what you do, folks, is you're going to have to select one question from each of the 5 components. So you're going to have to figure out, well, what's the most discussion-prompting question I can think of? For example, this person put up this under plants. How do plants reveal God's hand at work in the world? All right. Now, after you write that question down, then you want to jot down your answers to that in shorthand. Because what if you ask the question to the class and they're all sitting there with their jaws open? You want to be able to have something to get the juices going, so you want to throw out a little bit. And so this person, they were prepared in case there's big silence there. This teacher wrote down, plants are God's way of providing oxygen to keep humans and animals alive. Wow, that's the work of God in the earth. Okay. Plants were designed by God to give pleasure to the human eye. Did you know that that's what the Bible says about why God created trees? It actually says that He created it for 2 purposes. One was to give pleasure to the sight, and the other was for food. So when you look at a tree and you feel relaxed, I can see some out there. It just kind of refreshes you, and that's God's doing. Okay, plants provide nutrition Not some of them do. They provide raw materials for shelter, furniture, dyes. They provide a basis for economic development. That's God's hand at work. All right. Next one, creation. This person said, how do the designs of plants reveal the designer? And what do the designs of plants tell us about the designer? Okay. Let's pause for a minute. What would you say? To answer that. What comes to your mind?
God is so creative in that he didn't just make one type of plant.
Yeah.
He made a variety. Also, he made it so it's very system oriented. So the plants produce a seed, which then grows a new plant. And then just all the multiple ways that seeds get transported.
The design of how the seeds go through the air, like dandelion seeds, they blow. I mean, it's amazing. And you mentioned the variety in the design is phenomenal. Yeah. Now, we as Christians, we can celebrate that. And we see plants differently than an atheist sees a plant. And we need to celebrate that and bring it up to the conscious level with our students. That is helping to give them a Christian mind. All right, well, this person said this. Plants tell us that we are cared for moment by moment by a loving creator. Okay, this is one way of demonstrating his care. They demonstrate examples of beauty, and this gives us ideas for recreating beauty. You know, a lot of times the things that human beings create are a reflection of what they actually see that God has created first. And that's particularly true of plants. A lot of design ideas coming from them. Design ideas for clothing and artwork, and thus revealing the creator designer as the master teacher. Oh, that's interesting. Okay. You see where that teacher's coming from? You know, okay, we're being taught something here by this. What is it? Okay, next. What does it say?
What do plants have to do with Christ's call to disciple the nations?
Oh, that's an interesting question. We're called to disciple the nations. How do plants fit into that calling? Any ideas? You ever thought about that before? Maybe not. Any ideas? How do plants fit into... Yes.
Well, Jesus told his disciples that they will know that you are my disciples by the way you love one another.
Yes.
And not only in respect to humanity of how we treat one another, but how we steward life around us.
Yes.
So if we claim to be Christians and yet we're littering, we're not conscious of how our impact is on the environment.
Yes.
If we are not the protectors of what God has created,
Yes.
then we're not truly fulfilling our role.
Right. Yes. Stewardship is really important. Tomorrow we're going to see a little video clip about George Washington Carver following the plants theme. He was a real stickler on waste and abuse and things like that. Yeah. Okay, this person said, what does it say?
Through the wise and resourceful use of plants, people can honor Christ by fulfilling his commandment to love our neighbors as ourselves. By making conscious connections between plants and our role as earth rulers, we can teach human responsibility and the joys of co-working with God.
Huh, there's a lot there. This is what I like about these questions. They're quite open. There isn't just one response you can make to that. And next, what responsibilities are part of our relationship with plants? Waste and abuse do not fulfill the Lord's intention for plants, human beings, or animals. And finally, how do plants relate to the first commission of Genesis 1? This is an interesting description here of Genesis 1. 26 to 28, this person's describing it as the first commission. And it was the first commission where, I'm going to read this from the Amplified. And God said, let us, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, make mankind in our image, after our likeness, and let them have complete authority over the fish, the sea, the birds of the air, the tame beasts, and over all of the earth, and over every living thing that creeps upon the earth. So God created man in his own image, in his likeness and the likeness of God. He created him male and female. He created them. And God blessed them and said to them, be fruitful, multiply, fill the earth, and subdue it with all of its vast resources, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, birds of the air, and over every living creature that moves upon the earth. That was God's first commission to human beings. Right there. Pretty awesome. So, the cultivation of plants is a big part of our earth ruling role and function. Through the proper governance and stewardship of plants, we can put our image-bearing qualities to good use so that we can be a good reflection of our Creator as to how we relate to plants. Okay. I said here that you're going to design a free-flowing classroom conversation that will enable your students to draw their own conclusions, as we have done today, as to how any topic connects to the bigger picture, or the whole, capital T, capital W. What do I mean by the whole? Well, what are you looking at here? What's the meaning of this piece? Anybody?
It's a yellow ombre square. Rectangle?
Yeah, but what is this? What are we actually looking at here?
Banana.
A banana. Okay, how do you know?
Because of our experience with the slides earlier.
Yeah, we saw it earlier in that little video. Yeah, that is a banana. Now, if you hadn't seen that video, maybe some of you would say, oh, of course it's a banana, but some of you might say, no, it's not a banana, it's a this or that, okay? You would have conflict of opinion maybe, or different opinions of what it is or isn't. But I'm just trying to get across the idea that the context really clarifies that issue, what you're looking at. So context really is critical. Yeah, bananas. So the big picture is the whole. And the smaller piece is what we need to interpret properly. So you're teaching kids to see all kinds of smaller pieces. But the idea in Christian education is to help them to see those smaller pieces in the larger context of the biblical worldview. And when they do that, they understand things better than if they didn't have that bigger picture. They can properly interpret those smaller pieces. They can see trade differently through the perspective of seeing it in the context of there's a lot more going on here than, fish and corn and things like that. A lot more going on. So the big picture provides context for proper understanding, correct understanding. And the most important big picture in life, or the whole, is what the Bible provides. I want to underscore this idea. This is an idea that has fallen out of favor, shall we say, with the culture as a whole. But it wasn't always that way. We, as a culture, okay, there was a time when the Bible actually served as a big picture of reality for all of life, even for people that weren't Christians. Now, this is shocking to some people, but I came across a quote once that was just really quite amazing. This is from Alan Bloom. In his book, The Closing of the American Mind, which was written in 1987. Bloom taught at Cornell University. He also taught at the University of Toronto, Yale University, and the University of Chicago. He was not a Christian. He was born second-generation Jewish immigrants. And this quote is from the Simon & Schuster edition, page, 58? Here we go. In the United States, practically speaking, the Bible was the only common culture. Wow. One that united the simple and the sophisticated, the rich and the poor, the young and the old, and it was a very model for a vision of the order of the whole of things. And with its gradual and, he says, inevitable disappearance, the very idea of such a total book is disappearing. Now, this is 1987. Contrary to what is commonly thought, without the book, he's referring to the Bible, without the book, even the idea of the whole is lost, period. Quite a statement coming from a non-Christian professor. And I think he's right. I think he's right. I mean, he knew more than I do about it. I say, okay, I think you're right. That's the way it used to be. In 1831, there was a French historian by the name of Alexis de Tocqueville, came to America to find out what made America tick. And he said this: from the earliest settlement of the immigrants, politics and religion contracted an alliance which has never been dissolved. At least it hadn't been dissolved up to that point. I do not know whether all the Americans have a sincere faith in their religion. By the way, what was their religion? Was it Buddhism? What was it? Christianity. Christianity. Okay. I don't know whether all the Americans have a sincere faith in their religion, Christianity, for who can search the human heart? But I am certain that they hold it to be indispensable to the maintenance of Republican institutions. And this opinion is not peculiar, get this, it's not peculiar to a class of citizens or to a party. He said it belongs to the whole nation and to every rank of society. The Americans combine the notions of Christianity and of liberty so intimately in their minds that it is impossible. It's impossible, he said, to make them conceive the one without the other. Now that's the conclusion of a Frenchman, a French renowned historian, by the way, who came to the country to see for himself what made us tick. This is what he found out. There's more to that in the book. He said it hit him. It was one of the first things that hit him when he came to this country. And he said it isn't like that or wasn't like that in France, where he came from. The two, religion and civil government, were just never combined. But he said it's not like that in this country. And he noticed it right away. We have lost, our culture has lost its commitment to the whole, okay, which we once had. Now, that doesn't mean that it needs to be lost at Portland Christian School, does it? No, 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 no. It ought to be shining brightly here in this place. That there is a whole, the whole, a context to all of reality that gives everything meaning and purpose. So we have a relationship here between the context, the whole, and the biblical worldview. There are a lot of definitions of worldview. I like this one by Richard Wright. He said it's a comprehensive framework of beliefs. I like that. A comprehensive framework of beliefs that helps us to interpret what we see and what we experience and gives us direction in the choices we make as we live out our lives. Karen, if you could get the lights, please. This is one of the best short videos I've seen on biblical worldview.
We hear a lot about culture these days. Everything from culture wars to cancel culture. But what exactly is culture? In the broadest sense, culture is simply the way we do things. Culture describes a group's values, customs, and behaviors, whether the group is a family, a business, an organization, a community, or an entire civilization. At the root of every culture is a deep system of belief or a form of worship. This isn't surprising. People are hardwired to worship. The object of our worship may be God, or it could be the self, or we might worship government, nature, or our ancestors. Another word for these deep belief systems is worldview, which is simply a way of seeing reality. A worldview is composed of often unconscious ideas or assumptions that provide answers to life's most important questions. The answer to these worldview questions provide order and meaning to our lives, whether they're true or not. But from where do our answers to these questions come from? Many of our beliefs are assumed, acquired in our earliest years. At a deeper level, our worldviews come from the ideas and philosophies of key historical figures. Their powerful philosophies are picked up by artists who convey them in songs, literature, paintings, poetry, and film. These, in turn, influence cultural gatekeepers in universities, public education, business, government, entertainment, and law. They institutionalize the worldview in curricula, policies, and laws, and we absorb it. Why does this all matter? Because worldview shapes everything we think and do, and what we do shapes the world around us. It turns out nothing is more practical and more central than worldview. We can think of our worldview like the roots of a tree, underground and hidden from sight. The trunk represents our values. The branches are behaviors and actions. Our behaviors and actions, in turn, shape our lives and the world around us. This is the fruit. Sadly, the world around us is filled with bitter fruit. This is unacceptable. As Christians, we are called to give ourselves to change the world for the better. But in order to change the fruit, we have to change the root. Genuine social transformation requires a change of culture, a change of worldview. And this change must start with us. The Bible speaks of this in many ways. We are admonished to think with the mind of Christ, to take captive every thought, to make it obedient to Christ, to be transformed by the renewing of our minds. In short, we are to think and act differently, not according to the beliefs, values, and norms of our surrounding culture, but according to reality as presented in God's Word and the culture of God's kingdom. This worldview transformation doesn't happen automatically. It must be intentional, and it takes time, often years. This is because we are profoundly shaped by our surrounding culture, yet we are not imprisoned within it, nor are we defined by it. God has given us all we need to be transformed by the renewing of our minds. He has given us His Word, His Holy Spirit, and the Spirit of truth who guides us into all truth, and brothers and sisters in Christ to walk and learn with us. But we must decide to take the first step. In order to transform the world, we have to be transformed ourselves. And this begins at the level of worldview.